Welcome back to another episode of Leaders Unplugged. Today, we have a very special guest, Peter Barber. Peter Barber is a bass singer. He is also an opera performer, and he is also a member of the acapella group, The Bass Gang. Please welcome to the episode, Peter Barber. And to start this episode, we asked everyone this question: what made you decide to go into the music industry? How did you get into that path?
Yeah, great question. So my whole mom's side is super musical. My dad's side's not at all. But like family reunions growing up, we would be, around the piano, and a cousin might have a violin out, and my aunt might be on the piano, and I might be making up like a vocal thing. And so music was kind of always baked into my upbringing. I really was much more about sports, and that's kind of all I cared about all through high school. But at the end of my high school career, I took some voice lessons with a classical voice teacher, and he kind of encouraged me to study that in undergrad. So I ended up going to the University of Miami down in Florida for a couple of years to study opera. And it was totally overwhelming, and like taking all these classes on like language and ear training and all this stuff I had never even heard of and never really cared about up to that point. And I ended up switching actually from opera to music production, which is how I got into music producing and composing music and arranging, which I'm doing a lot more of now. Then right at the end of my undergrad, after switching to James Madison, I transferred to James Madison to finish my undergrad. I kind of switched back to opera and like kind of rediscovered a love for it. Ended up going to my master's at USC in California for opera, and then did my professional training in opera at the Academy of Vocal Arts in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow. And for going into opera, our podcast is primarily aimed towards young adults and college students.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what advice would you offer for someone wanting to pursue that career?
It's such a crazy career. I would say, first of all, you really need to love it. Like, you feel like you need to do it because there's so much work. And to really make it as an opera singer all the way to the professional level, you have to be in the top, couple percent in your undergrad, and then in your master's, and then in the next diploma you get, and then at the young artist level. And then finally you can start like getting paid real money to do it, which is the kind of the point I've just gotten after like, 12, 13 years of singing opera. So it's a grind. It's absolutely a grind. But advice for young folks is like, I would advise trying to sing in a number of different styles to see which one you really like most before you settle on it. Like, you should try some musical theater, and you should try some pop, and you should try some jazz, and you should try some opera. And like, by all means, when you're in high school, start working in those genres. Find a voice teacher that can teach those genres. And then so like by the time you're actually getting ready to go to school, you've kind of figured out not only what you're good at and interested in, but also maybe what your voice is most suited for. Naturally, my voice was a little louder than most people, and obviously it's low. And that was just good for being an operatic bass singer, because you have to be low and you have to be loud. There's like two core things. And you can do a lot with technique to change your voice and change your resonance and stuff like that, which of course I've done. But to be like an opera singer, for example, like, you have to be loud naturally. Because remember, we sing in big spaces with orchestra without microphones. So you just have to be able to project like crazy. But that would be my advice. Like, while you're young, while you're getting into it, explore and see what you like best and what you're suited for. If you do find that opera is the thing, then you want to make sure that you find a voice teacher. This is probably the most important thing. Find a voice teacher who either was a successful opera singer, like they sang professionally, had a very real career as an opera singer, or they're a teacher who has taught a lot of professional opera singers. There are so many hacks out there in voice teaching. Because you can just go to a liberal arts school, get a teaching degree, and then start teaching opera singers when you haven't done any of it yourself, or you're not even a good singer. So you need to make sure your voice teacher is really, really right, and that's a good starting point.
Yeah. And for it could be opera singing or just performing in general. Do you think it's necessary for someone to go to college for that career?
I would say for classical music, yes. And I would say for pretty much everything else, no. Like for opera, the technique is so advanced and so nuanced that you just need really formal training in that. Or if you're going to go into classical violin or classical anything really, it's just it's a different skill set. Whereas if you're going into like music production, that's what I actually got my degree in, my undergrad degree. But I've learned so much more like noodling around in the programs and figuring it out myself and watching YouTube videos than I did from like sitting in a class and like learning about Logic Pro, you know?
Yeah.
So I would say for classical music, it's very important to go to school for it. And for, I think, pretty much any other genre, you can get away with just building it your own.
Right, yeah. And for like opera singing, what would you say is like a way for people to know if like it's the thing for them, like if it's the right thing?
I think you have to, once you find a teacher, I think you have to kind of press them, to be honest with you, because a lot of teachers will tell you what you want to hear so that you'll come back and keep getting lessons and they keep making money. And all your friends and family are probably going to say, "You're so great. You're so great. You're the best singer around." You have to find a unit of people that you really trust and then really be like, "Listen, I don't want to do this for my life if I'm not good enough. Please tell me if you don't think I have what it takes." Um, and you've got to always have that circle around you of people you can trust. But early on, if you're really trying to figure out what you want to put all your time and energy into, that's probably the most important thing, because it's really hard to be fully objective with yourself. Like, you guys all know them. There are people who are really bad singers that think they're really good. Like, and they're not faking it. They're like, "Yeah, I'm awesome." And you're like, "Ooh," you know?
Right, yeah.
Like, if you can't hear that you're not in tune, like that's like an ear training thing. And if you physically cannot hear that you're not singing in tune, you think you're singing in tune, you know? And so like, it's hard to be objective just with yourself, and that's a whole other discussion. So I would say find your unit of people you can trust and then press them to tell you what they really think.
Yeah.
So when you were kind of getting into like, kind of figuring all this stuff out as you go, what would you say is one thing that helps maybe find people like that? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of
Yeah.
even friends are going to usually be on the more encouraging side.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of tips would you give to finding whether it's friends or just people around you who are
Yeah.
more honest?
I think it's less about finding the right people. I think it's something you have to take upon yourself is to bring that out of them more. Just to piggyback off what I was saying a minute ago, because I think the standard for people, if they're a good friend or if they're a teacher, is to be encouraging and is to tell you you should absolutely go for it. And in most cases, that's really good advice, especially if you just want to try something out. It's kind of when you get to the point where like, do you want to keep pursuing something to take it to the professional level? You know, like there's nothing wrong with taking a few years of voice lessons when you're in high school or even college to like figure out if you can do it. It's the issue of like, okay, now do I want to pay $40,000 a year to go to my master's for it? And then do I want to pay more money to go keep studying it? You know, because like undergrad is kind of all about figuring out what you want to do. High school is about figuring out what you might want to do, you know? But when you start going to the more advanced degrees and that's when you start like, you know, investing your 20s in what you want to do. And then, you know, it's very different starting something new early 20s or early 30s or early 40s. So I think it's really more about you, like go out, try everything you want to, and then when it comes time to when you're feeling like, okay, I really kind of got to figure it out now. Like I really got to figure out what I want to do. That's when I think you have to put it on yourself to bring the honesty out of people. I think it's quite rare to run into someone who are like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And they're like, "That's pretty shit."
Right.
You know, you have to be like, I need you to be honest with me and I won't be offended by it. Even if you will be offended by it.
Right, yeah.
You know? So I think it's something you have to take kind of upon yourself to do.
Okay. Um, and kind of following the learning side of things. As you were developing these skills, what was something that you thought was, you know, more difficult than expected, and something that maybe people underestimate when going into the kind of learning aspect of opera singing and
For
stuff like
opera,
that?
yeah. Yeah, there's so much more than just the singing. I mean, developing the technique is probably the longest part of the journey, and it's ongoing. It seriously never ends. Like I'm still working on various nuancy classical technique things every day. Um, so that just takes longer. Like I remember right when I started singing opera, I thought it was really good. I was like, man, I'm like professional already. And then you get a little better, and your ear gets a little better, and you're like, huh, okay, there's more to go than I thought. And that it's kind of like the more you learn, the more you realize how much you have yet to learn. Um, and it's just it's a forever battle, and it's a good thing too, because if your ear was fully advanced right when you started, you'd be like, I'm quitting. Like
Right.
I'm horrible. Like everything's wrong. So as your ear develops, you kind of figure out more and more how far you can take the path. But I would say that's for sure one. It's just like my my thoughts towards it when I started compared to now are very different. Because at the start, it's like I'm like a complete singer already, and now it's like, oh, I still have so much to work on, even a decade later. Um, Another thing that people might not think about going into opera is it's not that you have to be fluent in a bunch of languages, but you have to master the pronunciation, which takes a very long time. So when I'm singing, I have to sound fluent in whatever language I'm doing. So whether it's Italian, French, German, Czech, Russian, English, Latin, all these languages, you have to be able to sound as if you're like a native speaker. And so you get extensive coaching from native speakers on how to sound fluent. And you want to get to the point by the time you're professional to where you can pick up a new opera in another language and just know exactly how to sound fluent in it. And that takes a long time to get to as well. So like for that take, I mean, again, I'm probably 12 or 13 years into training, and I would say in the last 5 or so, it's gotten to the point where like I can pick up a paragraph in Italian and just read it, and I might not know exactly what I'm saying in that moment, but I'll sound like an Italian person, which is a whole different side of the training as well. Those are probably two things that you just like anyone can like. If I tell you like, do you think it would be a lot of time to memorize a Hughes roll and opera? You're like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of work. So that's like an obvious thing. I would say it's the language that people don't think about much getting into it, and how long that takes to get really proficient at, and then just the classical technique itself.
What was one tip that you found useful, or like a trick that you found in helping learning the language easier?
Mm, I think it's just exposure, and doing big roles helps a ton because it forces you to just kind of live with it for a long time. Like I've spent a decent amount of time in Italy studying Italian in various programs, and that's really helpful. Being kind of immersed in it and training in the language every day, and also when you're out and about, using the language instead of being like, oh, I don't know, I'm nervous. I'm just gonna because they'll speak to you in English, everywhere else in the world, right? When you go over there, so forcing yourself to use the language. Um, but yeah, I think exposure to it, like when I feel best about my language is after I've done a huge role in that language. Like at the end of that process. So let's say the title role in Don Giovanni is this huge Italian role, this huge Mozart role, and it's like hundreds of pages of music that's all in Italian, right? The language is all in Italian. So if you spend the requisite time to learn that role, you're just with that language all the time. And your brain, like almost subconsciously, starts to pick up language and meaning and patterns and stuff that you then can carry on to your learning going forward. So if you can somehow get the immersion of being in that country where the language is spoken, that's obviously the best thing to learn a language. But otherwise, it's just time with the score. It's just like dedicated time with the score, learning a big role, and then performing that role. Because also performing that role, it's like the language ingrains into like your body movements and your muscle memory in a way that just kind of like drives the grooves deeper, as opposed to just sitting with it, and you might be able to memorize all the words and stuff, but then putting it into an active experience, it's like, I don't know, pulling all these different like spheres of influence together to really drive the language deep. Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious. How many languages would you say you could read fluently? Like
Uh,
right now.
hmm. For sure, English, French, German, Italian. Um, if the Russian's in Cyrillic, not, but if it's kind of phonetically written out in like English letters, pretty good in Russian. Czech, probably the same. Latin, Spanish, for sure. Um, what else? 8,
Yeah,
what, 8 or so?
that's pretty good already. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your favorite part? I'm also curious. What was your favorite part of undergrad? Since Devin and I are both in college, we're kind of
Yeah,
curious.
yeah. I was in an acapella group in
Oh
undergrad
yeah.
called Exit 245, and I had the pleasure of being in acapella right after that genre had blown up because of Pitch Perfect and Pentatonics and the sing off and all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
And so, like, my first year, I was just telling someone about this the other day. My first year in the group, which was 2014, it's just 2 years after Pitch Perfect came out. So acapella is like, oh my god, it's a thing, you know. And that's when college acapella groups were like a thing, like a really big thing, and they're still going. But that time was really hot, and we sold out like an 1,100 seat theater for our college acapella group final
my
concert.
Oh my
goodness.
gosh.
That was just
That's impressive.
crazy. So being in that group was probably my favorite part about undergrad, because it was kind of like being in a fraternity, but it was much smaller. So everyone was really, really close. And if you're in a fraternity, you'll have some guys you're really close to, but if it's 100 guys, they can't all be your best friends, right? But like if you're in a group of 12 to 15 guys, you're just together all the time and you're united by music in a really special way. Um, which is a really cool thing. And another thing I loved about that was the group was mostly non-music majors. Especially if you're a music major and you're surrounded by music, like really music people all the time, you're like, I need a break. I need some fresh air. I need to be with like normal people. And so in the acapella group, it was like me and maybe 2 other music majors, and then 10 or 12 guys that were in like communications or psychology or finance or whatever. And so it's just like you get the music part of it, and you also get the like you remember how to interact with normal people. You know, if you're surrounded by all music people all the time, it's a very it's artists. You know, artists are usually we're wired a little differently, and so it's good to be interacting with a lot of people. Um, and that was probably like the most formative thing of undergrad. Is just being in that group and having that as kind of like a north star, um, and something that was really enjoyable and was a really like meaningful group of people to be around. Yeah.
Yeah. For people in college or even high school, would you recommend if they want to start pursuing a musical career for them to join like a choir, let's say, or an a cappella group?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Because you want to being social is so important, especially in those phases of life. Like you really want to have a close unit of friends. And that's a great place to find them. And the good thing about music is that it's a lot of good people. You know, like you can definitely find your way into circles or hobbies that maybe that's not the case. But we find out like if you do choir with people in high school, like a lot of those folks are gonna go to college and probably end up doing just fine. They might not blow the roof off the world, but you know, they'll go on and they'll be fine. They're like a lot of responsible, good folks in music, and a lot of really interesting people in music too. And so like that combination of people that are both good and interesting is like a good unit of people to be spending time with. And yeah, and choir, like high school choir is such like a low hanging fruit that so many people do. And most people have a good experience. And if they don't, they have like a lot of funny stories about choir in high school, you know? And you meet a lot of, and you'll meet a lot of good friends in that thing. So if you can combine like something you enjoy that you're passionate about and make it social, which high school choir, for example, is a great way to do that, then like do that thing for sure.
What was, and maybe this was easier for you than for some people, but what would you say are some ways to maybe maintain, especially in opera, which I would guess is a career that can take you to a lot of places, kind of thing, over the course of your career? What would you say is the best way to maintain some of those close relations when you're, away from them for possibly?
Yeah, that's tough. The people you're really close with, the time apart doesn't really matter. Like I'll have friends that they see once a year or less, but when we get back together, it really is like time never went away. There's some statistic on this where if you spend enough time consecutively with a group of friends, then the time apart won't matter. Basically, does not matter at all. It's something like 7 years or something. So like if you're friends with someone from the start of middle school through high school, and you're good friends with them throughout that period, you could go away to college the entire time and come back and meet them at like 25 and be like, "Oh my god, what's up?" And you'll be making the same stupid jokes you were making when you were
Right.
when you were 13. Like that's how it is for me. That's how it is for example, me and my brother, who not everyone's like best friends with their siblings, but like me and my older brother, like best friends. And I might see him twice a year. And I mean, the second we're in a room together, we're just the same weirdo kids doing all the same stupid accents and making all the same jokes. So I think for those people, like be in touch with them when you need to, especially if you have stuff going on in your life that you want to talk to somebody about. Those are the great people to talk to. But you don't have to worry so much about those connections. It's more like the connections that are new that you really think you should maintain because it'll be beneficial for one reason or another, or you just like the person and you want to stay in touch with them. Um, it's great to. I think the best way to do it's to hop on like a video call. I find like texting is it's good for quick little things. I don't think it's a good way to maintain deep connection. I think if you really want to stay in touch with someone, try to get them on like a Zoom call once every few months and just catch up. Just like fully catch up because then you get some kind of like face to face interaction. You can do it from anywhere in the world. Obviously, in person is better. You can go out to coffee once every few months, but that would be my bet. And that's like you guys have probably heard of like the 80-20 rule where you do 20% of like everything you could do, but it accomplishes 80% of the thing. To me, that's like a video call. It's like I think if you were texting someone all the time and then once a month you hopped on the video call, you'd still get more out of the video call. So just like do the video call and then like text them if you want to.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
hmm So for opera singing and being in the music industry, what would you say are some personality traits that help you, but also what are some traits that might inhibit your you?
Uh, Something that will help you for sure, at least in opera, is just how to put this as a personality trait. I mean, you find that there are plenty of opera singers who are not outgoing, that who become outgoing once they get on stage. But being outgoing, I think, is a good thing to have as an opera singer because not only do you need to be that when you're on stage and just be like vulnerable with the audience and just be like out there, but there's a lot of donor events and there's the moment when you walk into the audition room before you start singing and when you're leaving where like you need to be really personable. And if you walk in, you might be a great singer, but if you walk into an audition, for example, and you're not making eye contact with the panel, and you like don't say anything to the pianist who you're working with, and you just kind of start your song and sing, they might be like, "Oh, that was a really nice voice, but like, I don't think I want to work with that person." And there's going to be someone else who's just as good, who's a little bit more fun to work with, or who's more coachable or whatever. So I would say being outgoing I believe you can train yourself to do this. I think if you're an introverted person, you can absolutely train yourself to be more outgoing, at least in some situations. I think it's totally a trainable trait. So that's one for sure that would be good. I would say also just being disciplined, just because opera specifically and I would say the classical art specifically, it just requires a lot of time, really focused on usually building a skill set or becoming really good at a craft. So like for opera, it's the languages and the vocal technique I was talking about earlier. Classical solo pianists will be in a practice room for 8 to 10 hours a day, just practicing piano alone. So like you need to be really, really disciplined if you're going to go into like a solo instrumental performance career. That's very different from opera. We literally can't practice that much per day or we'll destroy our voices,
Mhm,
you know?
yeah.
Right.
So there's a lot more social aspect to it. So it does depend what you're going into. But I think for a performer, at least in like musical theater or opera or pop, or whenever you're going to be on stage singing and communicating with people, being outgoing is useful for that and for social situations. I'm trying to think of something that would not be useful. I mean, you have to get over the fact that like you might really embarrass yourself sometimes, and you just like, and at the end of the day, no one cares. And even if it's really bad and people remember, it will over time just become a funny story, probably to everybody. Um, there are so many worse things you can do than embarrass yourself, like being an asshole is way worse long term, even short term, than like really embarrassing yourself. So I think going into the arts, I mean, to make it as an artist, you have to put yourself into your art and then put that art in front of people. And like some people are going to just bash it. So I think being outgoing is great. Being really concerned with what other people think is not great. Although the trouble is that's how most artists are.
Yeah.
It's something we're all constantly fighting. And then being willing to like really risk it and go for it. I know it's so cliche to say, but like you just won't get anywhere if you're doing all the safe moves. And there's this idea of like there's a lot of people who want to be exceptional, but they're not willing to be the exception, which is literally what it means. So like if you're going to be exceptional, you have to do stuff differently. You have to do things that not everyone else is doing. If you do what everyone else is doing, you will be like everybody else. It's so obvious, but it's like incredibly true.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious with that. What would you say is maybe the one thing or multiple things that you've done that was the exception from everybody else, or are you still finding that?
Um, Always finding it for sure. I think I'm learning more and more about what I'm truly good at because I've found out that I'm good at a lot of things in music. Like if you're a professional musician, you'll be good at like everything, sort of. But finding out the things that I'm really good at, like where I really thrive, um, I'm finding that in this big piece I'm writing right now, this huge original piece of music. It's all about the Trojan War and Achilles
Oh,
and
wow.
Iliad and all this big. It's big.
Wow.
It's 30 songs, over 2 hours of music. It's totally fleshed out musically, and I'm working on like lyrics and demo tracking stuff right now. But I found out through this is like because I've worked in so many genres at a high level, like whether it's EDM or opera or country or acapella, bass singing, like all these things I've done at a pretty high level. I found that all those influences are coming together, and I'm making music that doesn't sound like music I've heard before. Like it has elements of various genres, and I'm able to put it together in a way where I'm like, I don't know another artist personally or professionally that has the same kind of musical experience that I do. So how can I use all that to like really make my own sound? And so it's all about kind of embracing what makes you unique. And one thing about me that makes me unique as an artist is the variety of backgrounds that I've worked in at a high level musically. And that's also what makes the YouTube channel good, is because like when I'm doing an analysis video on something, I can have some random reference to like a dubstep song, and I'll talk about that. And then I'll talk about something with classical opera technique. And then I'll talk about something from the country world. And it's like, what? Like, why does this guy know about dubstep and opera and country? And like, but I've learned how to use all those unique, quirky things to my advantage. And more I'm leaning into that.
Huh. Yeah. What would you say is one success that you have learned a valuable lesson from in your career? But also, what is one failure that you have learned a valuable lesson from?
I feel like the big successes have all come from just like really fully committing to a project. Like you get in there and you get deep on something for a long enough period of time, and it's there's this phrase "too good to fail," which I really like, and that's again what I'm finding is like if you really for a long enough period of time put work into a project or a series of projects, right? Like for the YouTube channel, for example, it's like if I had done the YouTube channel for 6 months and stopped, nothing, like very tiny following, no one cares. But do that for another 4 years, and then it's 300,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So I think the big successes like that, and like working with the bass gang or whatever, have all come from just, it's like time under tension. It's just like keep creating high quality work over a long period of time, and good things will happen. It's like, if you just get good enough at something and you do it for a long enough period of time, you will be successful at that thing. Like, almost guaranteed. Of course, there's some luck involved, especially in the artistic world, but I think you can really minimize the luck if you just do that. If you just keep going and keep making good stuff. And now I'm trying to think of a failure that I've learned from. Surely there are many. I would say, like, early on, I haven't done this in a long time. I really pride myself on being super prepared when I show up for operatic gigs. But there were definitely times in undergrad or my master's degree, probably even, is probably when the buck kind of stopped. But showing up unprepared to a rehearsal and getting called out for it, or just clearly being not as prepared as the person next to you, that's a quick learning experience. Because you just, if you're someone that takes responsibility for yourself, which I think is also another really important thing, then you're like, yeah, I just didn't put in the work, and I showed up unprepared, and it's obvious to me and everyone else, and this is a horrible feeling, and I'm never gonna let this happen again.
Right, yeah.
How did you? I'm curious. I kind of know a little bit about it personally, but how did you end up forming the bass gang?
Bass Gang's great. I love the Bass Gang. Shout out to the Bass Gang. So in the pandemic, all of us had started making our own solo stuff. And I think maybe Tommy and Marwan, even though he was so young at the time, had been doing it before the pandemic started. But me and Bobby, for example, we started making our own solo stuff in 2020. Started our YouTube channels in 2020, like a couple weeks after the pandemic started. And we were in this group. It was actually Tommy's group. Tommy had started this group called the Bass Singing Nation. It's this bass singing Discord server. And he, or someone from the group, found me and Bobby and Marwan and brought us in, just because we were other bass singers online. Cool. So we're in the group. And then we start making videos, and then we become BSN ambassadors, Bass Singing Nation ambassadors, which just means the admins of the group are like, hey, these guys are like actually kind of good at what they do. Let's bring them in this smaller group, and then we'll like kind of promote their music, and they can be like representatives of the group online, essentially. So we're in the ambassadors, and then Bobby and I do our first project together. I reached out to Bobby on Instagram, and I was like, hey, do you want to do a cover of Avi Kaplan's song "The Summit" with me? And that was the first song we ever did together. And as that project was coming to a close, I put a message in that ambassadors group, kind of jokingly. I was like, I tagged them all. I was like, so guys, when are we doing a cover together? And Marwan immediately makes a little message group with the four of us, and we start chatting about a project we can do together. And originally it was just going to be like a song or a medley of songs maybe. And we ended up making that first EP, and we just had such a good time working with each other, and it turned out so well for us, for like our capacity at the time to produce music and all that. They were like, let's just keep going. And then like the next thing we did was, I think, Emperor's New Clothes, and that was our first single. That was when we started the actual YouTube channel for the Bass Gang, and the rest is kind of history. May the Bass Be With You. That whole thing was because we released the first EP in May. I think I threw it out there. I think I made up the Bass Gang, just the name. I was like, we were organizing stuff in Google Drive, and I was just making up names, and they all just stayed. It's like, all right, we'll be the Bass Gang, and because it's in May, May the Bass Be With You. Okay, whatever. And then that's become like our whole thing. And so now we've released 4 EPs and like 15 singles or something. We're about to get started on our 5th EP. And yeah, the group has over 100,000 subs and over 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. And so now it's still really fun. The projects have gotten bigger and better, and now it's like a financially viable thing.
Wow. What is one thing you admire about each person in the bass gang?
Oh, this is good. Okay. Marwan is like a little prodigy, and I admire his work ethic so much. Like he is unbelievably prepared and organized and never complains about the work, even when it's like a complete overload. I mean, he started doing this and he was like 15. I think he joined the bass gang when he was 16.
Oh
Wow.
Just
man.
crazy. And he was already making all his own incredible acapella covers that he was producing and arranging. His dad worked in audio engineering, so he has learned some production chops from his dad. But Marwan, just like despite being the youngest member of the group, is incredibly mature and disciplined, and it continues to shock me. Um, Tommy, I love so many things about all these guys. This is tough to pick one thing. Let me do Bobby first. I love how chill Bobby is. Like he is the most chill guy. He came out to Phoenix last fall, and we spent like 2 weeks together. And he is just the most laid back. Even when he's stressed, he's chill. You know, he's that kind of guy. And he's also a really positive guy. He's a really empathetic guy, really cares about people. And but I'm gonna go with chill because like I'm a pretty chill person, but I'm also like type A and super disciplined and all that stuff. And Bobby's just 100% chill. And he gets so much done. Like he makes so many musical projects, but like watching him, I'm like, I don't know how. Because he's not like, okay, I'm going to get up and at 7 a.m. I'm working on this and at 9 a.m. I'm working on this. Like that's how I am. And I'll schedule my whole day out. Bobby's just like, just go with the flow, record a little of this, record a little of that. I might miss this deadline, but I'll get this deadline. But he's also so good and so creative and so smart that it just like doesn't even matter. Like everything he puts out is gold. And so he can be the chill guy and still make these amazing projects. It's amazing, truly. God, I love Tommy. Tommy's one of my favorite people. We met first in the Czech Republic when we went there 2 years ago. I genuinely think like Tommy just has like the genuinely like the best heart, and you can really feel that when you're with someone. It's just like he's just such a good person down to like the deepest part of his core. Really cares about people. Really cares about the music. Really doesn't care like about how well the music performs or the clout or anything like that. He's just in it because he loves it and he loves working with us and he loves music and it's just like it's the most pure it's the most pure thing that I've seen. And it's rare you see that in an artist where they're really like they're just not attached to the views or the success of the song. They really are just doing it because they love it. And the success is coming as well, but it's just it doesn't seem like that's a factor for Tommy. He just loves it. Does it because he loves it.
Especially that aspect. Like, how would you say these things have impacted you over the years of working with them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely influenced in those ways by them. Like, I think Bobby makes me chill out a little bit about project stuff. Marwan and I are very much kindred spirits in like the discipline thing, but he figured it out way before I did, you know. But we're both always on the same page about like, all right, let's set deadlines, let's organize this stuff. Like, we need this by this date so that this can happen. And when Marwan and I do a lot of stuff together as well, like I always hire him for video editing projects and stuff like that. And our brains we're always on the same wavelength. So there's always just an easy understanding of like when you need these videos by, like what do you need in the details, what do you want the editing to look like, and it's just like boom, 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 back and forth. And so I don't know, Marwan just there's no effort required. We just understand each other with projects. Um, and in that though too, because something he truly does better than anyone is he doesn't complain about stuff. Like he really just does the work. And no matter like he has pulled so many all-nighters to like finish editing projects for us. And he'll just be like, yeah, I was up for 26 hours straight finishing this. He's not like complaining about it. He's like, yeah, I was just up for 26 hours, whatever. Like, that's incredible. Like, I would be in such a bad mood if I were up for 26 minutes straight or 26 hours straight. Um, and then Tommy, yeah, Tommy really, he just reminds me to do it because I love it. And like the success will continue to come. But that's a great reminder to have. It's so easy when you start seeing the numbers to start getting too attached to the numbers. That was really happening to me a couple years ago, and I've gotten away from it since. But Tommy the pure Tommy P is such a good reminder of that.
What would you say is kind of your main goal now? Like now that you've kind of gotten into the career and you're kind of you're finding your spot in the career area, whatever. Can't think of the word.
Music industry.
That, yes. What would you say is probably your most current goal of what you want to reach in the future?
Yeah, I do think about goals a lot. Like both short term and long term stuff. My long term goal, deep down, I think I've finally accepted that, is to be I want to be like a proper big time original artist, like original solo artist. Keep working with the Bass Gang because I love them, and I keep building the YouTube channel. But like working on this Achilles Iliad Trojan War project I was just telling you about, I was like, I want to do stuff like this. This is what I want to do. This is where I've by far been the happiest and most fulfilled doing any projects so far. And I think it's because I'm really using like all of me to do it, like I was telling you about earlier. I've probably worked on it for about 1,000 hours over the last 8 months. It's been like I'd say 4 hours a day for the last 8 months. And so many of those hours, I'm genuinely, if I'm not just content sitting in the studio working, I'm like hyped. Like I'll be super hyped just alone in my house working on this project. And usually after I've worked on a project for a long period of time, I'm so sick of it. I'm like, for the love of God, can I just get the final master and release it and just never think about it again? And then a year after that, I'm like, okay, that was pretty good. Like now I like it again.
Yeah.
This project, I can just drop in anywhere in the 30 songs and listen to a song and be like, yeah. Yeah. And it's not even close to finished yet, but like I think storytelling, like telling the epic story of that era through original songwriting in the genres I want to make, doing the vocals that I want to do or want other people to do, that I think is my ultimate happy place as an artist. And I think where I have the most potential to like really make an impact. So that kind of stuff is what I want to do. That's what I want to make the most out of my musical life. For opera, because there's like goals for each different thing, right?
Right, of course.
For opera, now that I'm making the transition into being what's called a full-time guest artist. So up till now, I've been in some kind of program. Like I finished school a while ago. I finished my like official training, but I've been in like young artist programs, which is where you work for opera houses for basically like the whole year. And you kind of do what they need you to do. So you might be singing big roles for them, but you don't get paid very much. You're like it's kind of like a really high level internship, so to speak. Guest artist is when you start getting paid a lot more money, and it's when opera companies bring you in just for one show. So let's say, hey, we want you to do this role in this show, this time in 2026, and you go in and you do that one show with that company, and then you go to the next thing with a different company, and you bounce around. And so that's called being a guest artist. So I'm moving into that now, and I would love to eventually someday be doing these guest contracts with like the major opera houses, with like the Metropolitan Opera in New York is the biggest one, Lyric Opera Chicago. Then there's tons of houses over in Europe and Asia as well. So I'm in no rush to get there, especially like I'm still considered very young for a bass voice, especially in the opera world. So there's no pressure for me to get there anytime soon, but I would like to be able to keep both of those worlds alive. Like I've got my one foot in like the new world of the Bass Gang and the YouTube and all that stuff, and keep everything in the opera world going as well. I would love to get the YouTube to 1 million subscribers, just because that'd be sick.
Yeah.
It's not like where my biggest passion is, but I do like the education aspect that I do with the analysis videos. I think that really does impact a lot of people in a good way and helps people appreciate music more and appreciate the artists they like more, which is really cool. And I would love for the Bass Gang to get like big as well. Like really, really keep pushing the Bass Gang. It'd be awesome if we could get to 1 million subs there too, or have like 1 million monthly listeners or something. I don't know if the Bass Gang is in a genre, at least for the moment, where it can be like really, really big, but like niche big, like niche fame. I think that's totally doable and would be really cool. And just some of the really fun things about the bass gang too is not only working with the guys, but we get so many really cool collaborators. You know, like Tim Faust, for example. Tim Faust. Hopefully, we'll get Jeff on a track at some point, or we'll get Avi Kaplan on a track. We've gotten to sing with so many like amazing basses and so many non-basses as well. Like we brought Vinny on for the Dragonborn Comes in the last EP, which was really, really cool. We've worked with Melinda and Lauren Paley and all these great singers. So like that's the bass gang is just like a passion project that has just happened to go really well. And I think all of us are like, yeah, let's just keep doing it and like kind of see how far we can take it.
So when we've been interviewing people, there has been a theme of mentors and people who have inspired them to pursue their career. Who are some of those people for you?
I guess it's different for each of those like fields I was just talking about. For opera, the most inspiring things for me is just hearing great singing in opera, like hearing the best, in my opinion, the best bass singers at least were in like what's called kind of the golden age of opera, which is like mid 20th century through like the 90s. So like Samuel Ramey is one. I talked about this on when we chatted on the, but yeah, so Samuel Ramey, Cesare Siepi, Nikolai Gyaurov, Ezio Pinza. There are just like some voices when you hear them and you're just like what I would give to sound like that on an operatic stage, just like a canon. And that's the most inspiring thing. And I think that's the case for a lot of singers. Like the most inspiration you get is just from hearing great singers. So I would say that for opera. For bass gang and non-operatic bass singing, I mean, it's got to be the big time basses. It's got to be Tim Faust and Jeff and Avi Kaplan and all those guys. Because I was listening to in high school when I first started becoming kind of obsessed with the low bass voice. I would listen to like really low gospel singers, like Tim Riley and J.D. Sumner and like all these freakish low voices, and I was like, how is that even possible? Like I didn't understand. And that kind of got me interested in bass singing, kind of made me want to be a bass. But then, like, practically, I was never going to go into gospel. I think there's some great music, but it just wasn't a genre I was, like, interested in, really, as far as singing. So it was like, you know, you hear Avi Kaplan sing the low stuff and, like, Pentatonics, you're like, oh, my God, that's the coolest thing in the world. You know what I mean? Or, I mean, like, one of the first moments I remember is the Ring of Fire with Avi and Tim. It's just like, this is incredible. Like, I want to sing that stuff. Yeah. You know, so those guys for sure. As far as songwriting, like what I'm doing with the Achilles project, no question, is actually a friend of mine named Mako or Alexander Seaver, who writes all the music for League of Legends and a show called Arcane and Riot Games, and he works in like big video games and stuff like that. This guy, the way he has figured out how to blend like orchestra with like electronics and like blending the kind of like old school feel of analog instruments, like the like symphonic music, with the new world, like heavy sampling and, you know, like distorted vocals from like a metal singer, like all that. He's just the music from that show Arcane and from League of Legends, this video game company, and they make like some of the best music in the world. It's crazy. His songwriting and his production has been like, for me as a songwriter, the most inspiring thing for sure. Like I take a lot of inspiration from that idea of combining orchestra with electronics and just kind of like old world, new world, which is kind of like who I am as an artist, being an opera singer that's super old school and being like a modern day producer. So like really it fits me, and it's the music that I happen to like most and get most inspired by. For YouTube, probably my friend Elizabeth from the Charismatic Voice. She and her husband Kirk, just like seeing how they operate the YouTube channel, like they've got just a huge team. They've got lawyers. They've got all these like virtual assistants. They run such a tight ship, and it's such a machine down there. But it's all fueled by how much Elizabeth loves music, and that comes across in her videos. So it's like everything under the scenes or behind the scenes is a machine, but then it's headed by her, who's this lover of music, who's brilliant, and as someone who's doing the same stuff, right? And those two have been mentors for me. They've given me tons of advice on on what to do with YouTube. So I would have to say her. She and Kirk, her husband Kirk, for YouTube, probably my biggest inspirations. And I'm just like basically trying to follow what they're doing. Oh, and
Oh.
podcasting. Modern Wisdom is my favorite podcast with Chris Williamson.
So, yes, I mean, you're getting to the point that I think there's quite a few people out there who know who you are, know your name, stuff like that, heard your music, all that good stuff. How would you say is the best way of dealing with like the fame, like people maybe recognizing you on the street, or because once your name's out there, it's harder to have more of like a alone time in a sense. Like you're always kind of being watched on the internet or whatever, wherever you are. How would you say is the best way to deal with that, or have you had any real difficulties with it?
I have not had difficulties with it because I'm almost never on my phone, and that's where most of this fame would be. I've only had a few people recognize me in public. At this point, that will keep happening more and more. Like if me and Bobby and Big Brevik go out in downtown Nashville, people will recognize us because it's all of the bass singers at once, or if Tim's with us or something, it's like, wait a second. You might reckon Brev's really recognizable because he's enormous and has a huge beard. So someone might recognize Brev and be like, wait a second, I know you guys, the bass singers. It's like, yeah. So that happens if we go out in like Nashville. But the YouTube channel, it's not quite big enough yet. Like my stuff's not quite big enough to where people are recognizing me often. It does happen sometimes in airports, or especially if I'm at like a music event, there's usually someone that will recognize me from something. But I really pride myself on this. This is another huge piece of advice I would give people is like, if you're trying to accomplish a lot and produce a lot of stuff, if you doom scroll, it's over. You can just quit. You can just go ahead and quit now. So like, I think the phone is the most. There's so many benefits to it, and you can really use it as a tool, but it can suck. It can suck the inspiration and life and time completely out of your whole schedule. So, in my most productive time periods, sometimes I have to be on my phone purely for communicating with collaborators about upcoming releases and stuff like that. If I don't have that going on, my screen time will be 30 minutes to an hour a day. I'm just off it. I'll get up, I'll check the time, I'll work on stuff until like mid-afternoon. Then I might get on my phone and answer some messages, put it away again, go back to work. And so I really don't, like I'll show up in a YouTube premiere that some friend is doing, and then that's when I'll feel like the fame where it's like, oh my God, Peter's in the premiere. Oh my God, hi Peter. Ah. But it's like, so far there's been nothing negative to come from it. I think a couple years ago, when I mentioned this earlier, when the numbers were starting to get to me and I was starting to like always attach myself and like my worth with how well something performs, that was when it kind of sucked. But I think for the most part, I've gotten over that. And the communities I'm in and the circles I'm in are just overwhelmingly positive. So aside from the few like really, rude negative comments you get, which you will get if you build any kind of platform, it's like overwhelmingly positive, and I just don't spend much time engaging with it. I think that's the big secret weapon.
And as far as like doom scrolling and that stuff goes, what's one way that you found most useful to not do that, to not look at your phone?
To just not get hooked on it?
Yeah.
So all notifications are off all the time. Or I'm on do not disturb rather. So some things I do have notifications like off, like Snapchat off, Instagram off, all the social media apps, because at this point it would be like just like right. So notifications off and phone on do not disturb. So when I decide to check it, then I can check all the messages, but I'm not getting bothered and pinged by it. That's huge. Also, when I'm working on something, unless I absolutely need my phone, it will be in another room. So out of sight, out of mind for the phone is like everything. You guys have probably felt this. I don't know if you've been like studying and your phone's like on the desk and you just like feel its presence. You're just like,
calls you.
Maybe I should just one more check. It's like. So I feel that too. If I'm working in the studio and my phone is even in the room, I like feel it. It's like Sauron in the Ring. It's like the eye. So notifications off, do not disturb, and phone in another room unless you really need it. And sometimes you need it if you're in communication with someone and it's important. But if you can be totally away from your phone, actually turn it off and put it in another room. That's gold. You will not be thinking about it at all if it's off in another room. And then if you do end up on a social media app, like another thing is because I do check, not as much as most people, but I check the social media apps a few times a day, right? And I'll usually check them to check messages and maybe check a post, watch a couple friends' stories. But I'm very quick to get off it. So if I've been scrolling for more than like a minute or two, I'm like, what am I doing? Like I'm just wasting time. Gone. And so like I think that's another thing you have to train in to just get off it and be like, if I put away my phone, I'm really not missing anything. Like, and whatever gets posted, it will be there forever if you want to go back and like watch something, right? So I think building the habit to get on your phone to use it more as a tool, like I was talking about earlier, like if you want to use it to stay in touch with someone, communicate with someone, do the FaceTime thing, it's great. If you're on social media platforms, you do have to be posting, but posting time compared to doom scroll time for most people is like 1 to a million, So it's like be on your phone when you need to and maybe a little bit more, but don't just be on your phone for no reason.
Right.
You know?
I think just a couple more,
Yeah.
a couple more questions. What throughout your whole career, and maybe you've kind of touched on this already. What would you say was like a moment where you kind of doubted going into this career, or if if you didn't have one, what would you say would be one for a lot of people getting into it?
I have certainly had plenty of moments. I think for the opera career, for me personally, now there are surely plenty of opera singers that really do enjoy every part of it. For me, I really am drawn most to the performing, like the actual being on stage in costume with the orchestra singing. I love that. That's a very small part of the career. Like until you get to more where the point I'm getting now, which is where, like, if you get hired to go perform a role that you've already done, then pretty much you show up for day one of rehearsal, you have a couple weeks of rehearsal, and then you perform stuff. That's a very different experience from having to learn an entire role start to finish and then coach it and then get it into your voice and then show up for rehearsals. Right. So like now I'm getting to the point where I'm getting hired for things that I've already done. And so I'm like, okay, I just like refresh it and then like put it in whatever revised version of my vocal technique. Doesn't take very long. Show up, I'm ready. It's not the 100 hours that it takes to memorize the huge role, right? So there have definitely been moments where the stuff that I don't like about the career has been outweighing the stuff that I do like. And specifically for opera, I'm talking about. And also with opera, what's tricky is that, like most of the people I know in opera is their big passion and they might have a secondary job, but they're really not considering leaving opera for like a different thing that they love. It's like, okay, I work like sales part-time and I do opera. It's not like I'm going to leave opera so I can do more of that because that's really where my passion is. Like if you're in opera, you love it, right? But for me, I have the YouTube and I have Bass Gang and now I have this original music. And so I am constantly being pulled by that other stuff that I really enjoy. I think what mainly keeps me in the opera world is I really love the performing and live performance is amazing. And it's really a different experience. No matter how big the numbers are online, if you sing in person for a group of like 25 people, that's a really different, really cool experience. Even if you might have something that gets 1 million views on a platform, that feels like fake. When you're singing for someone, it's like that human connection is like a very real thing, right? In the face to face, like you feel their energy, and it's a very different experience. So I would say that I really haven't. I'm trying to think if I've ever considered stopping like the YouTube stuff. I haven't really. It's just like for YouTube, I think I've known it's never been my end goal just to have the YouTube channel. It's always been make music in a big enough way to where like that's that's the main thing that I do. I think I'm hopefully going to find that starting with the Achilles project. So I've never really considered leaving YouTube, but I've certainly had a lot of conversations with myself and other people about like, do I really want to do like analysis videos forever? You know, like, is this really how I want to be spending my time? The podcast doesn't take enough time for me to really consider like getting rid of it. And I really enjoy talking to people. I've gotten to talk with amazing people for the podcast. It's really just opera, because opera, it takes so much time and effort and discipline. And often you just don't get much in return for it, you know? So that's really the only one where I've considered like, maybe like I would still be happy and fulfilled if I left that and did the other stuff. Whereas like the other stuff feels like it's kind of constantly evolving towards the kind of final stage. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And for YouTube, what would you recommend someone if they were wanting to like start posting on YouTube, or maybe even just like put a lot of energy into it? What is something that you recommend for them to start getting traction?
Imperfect action. So I think when some people are starting, they want to like do it right at the highest level right from the get-go. And it's not possible, because you learn so much doing it that there's no way to do it at your highest level at the start. So imperfect action is just like whatever you have, whatever resources you have, just start doing the thing, because the better resources will come. You will get better at what you're doing, which will increase the value of the product, whatever product you're putting out, whether it's like a podcast, or, you know, if you're actually selling a product, you know. But it will automatically get better just by doing the thing. I'm going to tell you about this thing I learned from Modern Wisdom. I think I've already shared like 3 things I've learned from that podcast on this podcast. There was this art teacher that was teaching a pottery class, and he was teaching 2 classes. One class, the only assignment was make the best possible pot this semester. Just make one pot. It's got to be the best. It's got to be perfect. And the other class, he said, all of you make as many pots as you possibly can, and you'll all be graded on how many pots you can make. And the group that made as many pots as they could, all of their pots by the end were better than the one pot that the other class made, because their skills improved so much just by doing the thing that by the end, they're just pumping out incredibly good pots. Whereas the other group, they never refined the skills enough because they were just working on that one pot the one time. So they didn't go through all the mistakes of messing the pots up and learn from those mistakes. They just tried to perfect the one pot. So if you're starting out on YouTube, or you're starting a podcast, or you're starting out to be an opera singer, like just start doing stuff with whatever you have. And if you just keep going, it will all get better. And like every measure of time or energy you put into it will constantly give you more return if you go for it, as opposed to waiting forever to start. You might start and you've got like the whole system figured out, but you're still going to suck. You'll just have all the good things surrounding your sucky product, you know? So you want all those things to grow together. Like, for example, the Modern Wisdom podcast. Chris Williamson started it just like sitting in his kitchen with like a trash camera and like trash microphones, sitting around his kitchen, talking with his friends. It's like 8 years ago. Now it's like 3.5 million subscribers. And he's talking to Jordan Peterson and Tony Robbins and best-selling authors. And he talked to Matthew McConaughey and stuff like that. But if you look back at his first episodes that are still on his YouTube, you're like, oh, so he just started. He just started, and now he has created this. I don't know if he coined this or the industry coined this, but it's called cinematic podcasting, where it's like tons of, you know, HD 6K cameras and the best lighting the industry has. So there are these beautiful, absolutely stunningly beautiful podcasts with like the highest quality audio. And it's like, he did not start there. He just started. And because he kept going for 7 years, the podcast, and because he's good at it, he's obviously very good at it, being a podcast host. It built up to the point where now it has the resources and he has the skill to put on what I think is the best podcast on the planet, you know? So imperfect action. Just do it. Start doing it.
Yeah. And I think, and maybe this or other things you've said in this podcast might be the answer to this question. But for our last question, we like to ask of everything, what would you say is the one takeaway for the audience? Whether it's a lesson learned or kind of a tip or something like that. What's the one thing you want to tell the audience?
My biggest guiding light for the last few years, it really takes time to build something great, whatever it is, and there's really no way to shortcut it. And so part of, if you want to build something great, if you want to be truly great at something, you have to find that thing, and then you have to stick with it for just a long period of time. And there's no way to shortcut the time. So like, if you want to be a great podcaster, then you do the Chris Williamson route and you make 1,000 podcast episodes over the course of 6 years, which I think he's approaching his 1,000th episode. If you want to be great at opera singing, you practice the boring stuff every day until your vocal technique gets so good that you step in a room and sing and they're like, when can we hire you? But that happens over the period of, if not decades, years. It takes at least a significant number of years back to back working on a skill to be truly great. You can be good at a bunch of stuff. You can be good at almost anything, but to be really great, to really be exceptional, you find something and you stick with it and you just keep going and you just keep going and you just keep going. So just keep going is like is the motto. I have that written on my wall. Like, shit, I just have to, yep, just, okay, got it. Just keep doing it.
All right. And I think that's about it.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter, for coming on the podcast. And thank you for those who are listening. Peter, is there anything that you want to shout out or mention?
Thanks for watching. Support these guys. They came all the way out to Phoenix to chat, so I'm expecting big things. Just keep going, boys.
Oh, we will. Don't you worry.
Well, that concludes this podcast episode.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you do like the episode and you want to see more, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, follow, whatever you're on, you know what to do. We've got some amazing people coming to this podcast coming soon. So until then, we'll see you there. Thanks for watching.
Peace.